What is the best vehicle manufacturer in SnowRunner? A question I know has plagued everyone since the dawn of time, so finally someone is going to answer it. Okay, so what do I mean by best? What I'm talking about is the manufacturer that has the lineup of trucks that are the most competent, most versatile, most varied, that kind of thing. I'm also talking about the sum rather than the average of all their trucks. I know the FEM and the Plan are good, but a manufacturer with 4 trucks that are nearly as good is better overall in my eyes, and I am only going off what is represented in the game. I know that the real versions of these manufacturers have plenty more trucks, but we're talking about SnowRunner here. Obviously this is mostly opinion, and I would love to hear yours once you've watched the video, so feel free to leave a comment down below, or come and have a chat in the Discord. Using the principle that more trucks is more good, I have sorted the manufacturers by the number of trucks they have. We can forget the manufacturers with only 1 or 2 trucks, so say goodbye to AAC, and Katra, Aramatsu, Bohr, Burlak, Dan, Don, Fen, Fudron, Gore, Hummer, KRS, MDB, Neoflad, Royal and Yar, and Ank, Earthroma, Ford, GMC, Jeep, Kirovets, Kola, Land Rover, Resvani and Tega. That takes us down from 44 to 16, but I'm feeling harsh, so I'm actually going to get rid of the manufacturers with 3 as well. As much as I like Pacific, Step and Mack, they just don't have enough trucks to compete with the top manufacturers, so that also removes Chevy, Derry, Freightliner, Carn and Voron. This leaves us with a short list of 8. Half of these have 4 trucks each, Kenworth, Tatra, Tuz and Zix, Caterpillar have 5, Alsdorf have 6, and both International and Western Star have 7. I should probably mention before I forget that for the sake of simplicity, Mack Defense was lumped in with the rest of Mack, White Western Star with Western Star, and Derry Special and Derry Longhorn are both under the Derry name. If you think my numbers are wrong, this may be why, or I just can't count. Now that we've narrowed it down a bit, we can start looking at the individual vehicles each manufacturer brings to the table. Starting with Kenworth's 4 trucks, we have the W990 and T880, both like all-wheel drive, but have a lot of add-ons available. They're pretty good for highway trucks, but you're going to need the C500 and 963 off-road. The 963 is a big bonus for Kenworth, being one of the best overloading trucks, and as long as there aren't too many hills, it could carry the manufacturer. But overall, Kenworth is not amazing. Then we have Tatra, and as much as I personally like their trucks, we do have some issues here. A plus is that they have a pseudo Scout in the 805, now that it gets an auto winch, it's basically a Scout, but then the other 3 are all 8x8s. All competent off-road, but severely lacking in add-ons. I don't know why, but Tatra trucks just get such a terrible selection. None of them get long logs, and none of them have a low saddle. So in SnowRunner, Tatra is just not a very good manufacturer. Up next is Tuz, and Tuz have their own problem. The largest vehicle they have to offer is the Tatari. Then they have the 166, the really old Scout, and the Action and Warthog, the light off-road trucks. All of their vehicles get auto winches, but none of them even get a 2-slot bed. So a similar result to Tatra, but in a very different way. The vehicles simply aren't big enough to support most add-ons. And finally, for the manufacturers with 4 vehicles, we have Zix. They have a couple of light off-roaders in the 5368 and 566A, but they are rather overshadowed by the 605R and 612H, 2 of the vehicles that can go furthest off-road in the game. 605R doesn't get the best selection of add-ons, but the 612H gets pretty much anything you could want to put on the back. So Zix is a pretty strong manufacturer, although it is rather carried by the 2 massive 8x8s. Up to 5 vehicles now for Caterpillar, although a couple of these I would be tempted not to count. Not that I'm actually keeping score, but I am also tempted to give minus points to Cat for having the 770G, because I hate it so much, it's just useless. There's also the telehandler, which I don't think anyone has used to actually move cargo for more than about 10 minutes, but you could use it as a Scout, until you find a small puddle. Cat then have the generic US semi-trucks of the 680 and 681. They aren't bad, but they're nothing exciting. The big Cat 745C is a bonus, it'll go just about anywhere. The only things it can't take there are a container, medium logs, and fuel. Overall, Cat's lineup is quite varied, but not exactly in a good way, because the 770G and the telehandler just don't provide any value. I also don't like how you can't paint the 745C, 770G and TH357. It's not a major gameplay issue, but it does have a negative effect on my opinion of the manufacturer and my enjoyment of using their vehicles. And then we have Azov with 6 vehicles, and 5 of them are good. The Sprinter is naturally the one that isn't good. Maybe one day it'll get an auto winch and you could actually use it as a scout, but I wouldn't recommend it currently. However, the Azov 5, 6, 7 and Atom are some of the best trucks in the game. They may not be as good in deep mud as the 612H or as good at really heavy trailers as the Kolobs, but they are still good off-road and are so versatile you could definitely play the game with only Azovs. On top of that, there is also the Antarctic, which is a very strong vehicle in the right situation and can drag the rest of them out of any difficulty they may face. Azov looks like a very good manufacturer, so the question is, can the manufacturer of 7 vehicles provide more value than Azov? International certainly have the variety. There's the 2 Scouts, one of them is the Scout, and the other is the Lodestar. There's the Transtar, a highway truck, the Paystar Twin Steer, which I have never been a fan of in game, but it's still pretty cool and nice to have. International then have 3 more standard semi-trucks in the form of the Fleet Star, HX520 and Paystar 5070. Paystar is the best off-road of the 3, but the others are still cool and are distinctly different from each other. So International may not have as much off-road capability as Azov, but they do have a very diverse lineup of vehicles, and none of them I want to delete like I do with the Certic Caterpillar. Western Star, on the other hand, have a lot of trucks, but also a lot of meh. The Twin Steer is the only truck that really stands out. I love the Twin Steer, lots of bonus points go to Western Star for having it, but that is not enough to make up for the generic bunch of US semi-trucks. I have also counted the currently upcoming 6900 XD, the Twin Steer's little brother, which is also cool and interesting, but I have no idea how good it will actually be, as at time of writing, they have shared one picture of it. They actually released the DLC as I was editing this video, so the footage you've been seeing in the background is my first time driving the 6900 XD. I think it's pretty good. It's got a lot of add-ons. Other than the 6900s, Western Star have the 2 47Xs, the 49X, 57X, and the 4964. The 57X is the highway truck that really does not suit SnowRunner at all, and I think it tells you all you need to know about the 47Xs and 49X that someone with an interest in trucks and over 1,000 hours of SnowRunner, cannot remember which is which. And the 4964 is just an older generic US semi-truck. Not that the Western Star vehicles are actually bad, but they are not as good off-road as the Azovs, and they aren't as varied and unique either. So the competition is therefore between Azov and International. The International trucks are far more varied, there is something in every class, whereas Azov just have heavy and off-road. But then Azov's worst vehicle for mud is probably the Sprinter, which may be functionally useless, but it's still quite competent at getting around. And the best thing International have off-road is the Paystar. In order to actually answer the question of what the best manufacturer in SnowRunner is, it really comes down to, is competency off-road more valuable than having a diverse and varied selection of trucks? And I think that as much as I like having a variety of trucks, my main save has one of each vehicle in the game, and I use as many different trucks as I can. We are playing SnowRunner here, and this is a game about off-road driving, so the selection of the International trucks you actually get to make use of is going to be more limited than with the Azov trucks, so being good off-road is probably more important. Another way to think about it is, if I had to play the game only using trucks from one manufacturer, would I pick International or Azov? I would pick Azov. Their truck selection is varied enough that it wouldn't get boring, and it would just be more enjoyable to the more difficult regions of the game with Azovs than with Internationals. So there you go, the best manufacturer in SnowRunner is Azov, followed by International. If I had to pick a third place, it would honestly be between Kenworth and Zix, and an honourable mention to both MTB and Neo Falcon for being the worst manufacturers in the game, having the most generic scouts possible and nothing else.